You're listening to the Hunt Stealth Podcast with Ryan Uffens, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild. Whether you're an aspiring hunter or an adventurer seeking the untamed, together we'll explore the strategies and stories that lead to success in the great outdoors.
We are here today with Martin Chagnovich. Martin, how was the show, man? It seemed like you had a great booth set up, and every time I came by to try and say hi to you, it seemed like there was a line of folks waiting to do the exact same thing.
Man, yeah, it was busy. I was in that back room, which for those of you that didn't come to the show can't really tell, but those that came to the show, yeah, thank you for finding me. It was a tough little corner, but the people that want to find you, and it was a good turnout. So I was very humbled and happy to get to connect with everybody and see some familiar faces and some new faces. But it was a good show.
Yeah, that was a new wing they just opened up back there.
Yeah,
they had some really great folks back there, great products and folks like yourself. So it'll be interesting to see how they continue to expand that and what they're going to do, especially with what Ryan Smith is getting ready to kind of how they're restructuring everything down there with the Salt Palace for the arena restructure and everything. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that all plays out. But anyway, yeah, it's fun. One of the things that I thought was really impressive is just like how many good people were there. Like, I'm sure you experienced the exact same thing, but there's just so many like incredible individuals that kind of just keep you pumped and going and makes you excited to get back out there and get after it again.
Yeah, that's the thing with social media, especially. I mean, that's where most of us all are in contact with each other. It's easy to kind of get disconnected or see a lot of negative things online. And so when you get to a show like that and you have all that good energy, people coming by, smiling, shaking hands, networking, and just saying kind words, like it really kind of gives you hope for society. You realize, wow, there's a lot of good people out here.
There, yeah. Leave some hope for humanity still.
Right.
For sure. Martin, hey, I want to dig into one of the things that we haven't really touched a whole lot on is shed hunting. And for folks that know you, they'll know that's something you can do. You've got some great ebooks that people can go and purchase. But maybe share a little insight into what's going on there, how you've had success, like the seasons here, right? Like they're starting to drop. I've seen some folks posting that they're out picking up sheds already in certain areas. So why don't you just talk a little bit about your experience with that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I do have some ebooks on my website. You could just go to chagoutdoors.com and find them, but they're going to be a great introductory for those that are just getting into shed hunting, or maybe you've been shed hunting and you want to just kind of up your success or build a good strong,
find something.
Yeah, build a good strong
me.
foundation.
I go out and I always come back with the empty pack.
Well, I'll send you a link to give it a read. No, it's tough, man. It's not like it used to be out there. There's a lot of people hitting it, and like you said, out there right now, which is early. Right now is quite early for elk, especially because they haven't even dropped yet.
Yeah.
But the deer they're dropping, and I mean, it's fun. I can't blame people. It's a riot to go out and walk around. And I've always been a believer, like everyone hunts and they say they're hunting for meat, right? Like we love the meat, but let's get real here. Antler, we're all horn junkies and we love antler. So like, why just let antler sit on the ground if we put our whole life into hunting for that antler? Why not go out and, devote your spring to picking it up too? And so I think a lot of guys are catching on, that it's a fun way to get out.
Do that, and you can make cool things like this.
That's badass.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm not that talented.
Well, I didn't do that. Like, full credit. This is Aspen Antlers. I don't know if you follow him. He's out of obviously Aspen, but yeah, we had him on the podcast, one of our first episodes, and just he made that and sent it over. But yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff that you can do once you find it. So anyway,
absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no. But yeah, so it's popular. I'll be getting out here soon though. I already did one hike this last week, just kind of scouting and getting an idea where elk are at right now, so that I have a better chance of picking up some browns when they do drop. So just kind of preseason scouting. Did pick up some whites that have been sitting out all year. So that was a good hike.
Yeah, it is just as competitive as the hunt itself. I mean, I was just watching, what was it, Yellowstone Wardens or something like that? I can't remember. I was just watching up in Montana. Dude, you've got guys camping out for when they open up the season to go, shed hunting. And they're like, some guy jumps the line and he got his tire slashed. And I mean, it
Wow.
almost seems like worse than the hunt itself up there. But anyway, yeah.
I
So go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've never dabbled in the like Wyoming shed hunt just because of that. Like, I love it, eat, sleep, and breathe shed hunting. But I don't know if I'm that, much of a diehard that I want to go sit in line and deal with all that jazz. Like, I guess that's kind of where I draw the line for myself. It just doesn't seem too fun to me.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. I mean, it's just if
No.
I stumble, I stumbled across one shed my entire life, and I wasn't even shed hunting. We were up at our cabin up in Garden City at Bear Lake, and we're lucky the family's had this lakefront property there forever. But I was out chopping some wood, and I walked around the back of the cabin, and I see this like little antler hanging in the tree, and I grab it. And at the time, I hadn't even like really gotten into hunting because I'm new to this, like the last 4 years. But I found it, brought it home, gave it to my German Shepherd, and it took about 6 months, but that thing disappeared.
Yep. Oh, they love sheds. My dog, his favorite is a moose or a deer antler. He'll chew on elk, but I've noticed the moose antlers are a little bit softer and maybe not as dense in the paddle portion of the antler. And yeah, he loves chewing right down through those suckers.
That's awesome.
But
So shed hunting it sounds like it's not too much unlike elk hunting, or if you're going after a mule deer. I mean, like you said, you've already been out kind of scouting around, trying to get an advantage, seeing where there are. So there's a lot of that goes into it.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I do feel like shed hunting has actually helped me in my hunting success too. And that's the way I look at it. It's not, I don't go out shed hunting just to make a few extra grand a year, really. Like, you have to absolutely kill it on sheds to even really make that much money. If anything, you're going to be just, breaking even and paying for your gasoline to get out there, your fuel. Um, but for me, shed hunting is getting out, observing the animals in their environment, seeing what they do in the wintertime, how far they might have traveled from summer to winter, just picking up on some habits and things that I can take into a hunt down the road. So that's more so where my passion for shed hunting comes from, is actually just because I love wildlife and the animals and learning, and it's just another excuse to get out and kind of do that.
Helps make you a more well-rounded hunter just in general.
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've talked about this with multiple people. Is for me, a guy who's new to this, like just getting out there, you get the miles in, walking around the hills. It helps build your endurance and get you ready for the fall. Because people that haven't been out on the mountain, whether it's chasing mule deer, whether it's chasing elk or looking for sheds, it's a different level of conditioning that you have to have in order to be successful, for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
What
go ahead.
you
I,
first?
I was going to say, yeah, some of the hikes I've done, I mean, you're looking at 10 to 18 miles for a day, somewhere in there. And then on your hike out, if say you're elk shed hunting, those things are heavy. If you had a successful day, now you're doing that hike with an extra 50 to 150 pounds of antler on your back, hiking whatever it might be, 8 miles back to your truck. So I mean, it's actually more physically demanding than an actual hunt, because usually when I'm hunting, I'm very strategic about my glassing points. I get there, set up. I'm not moving much. You're not. I mean, maybe if you're chasing bugles around, you can put down some miles, but for the most part, when you're hunting, it's quite strategic, and shed hunting, it's just getting out there and gritting, because you're not going to get those antlers unless you're walking for the most part.
It's crazy how hard it can be to find those too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm watching videos. Like I think of like the reels that you see. It's like, hey, can you see like the snow leopard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this little snow leopard in there. It's like the same thing. Looking for some of those sheds, man. It's like if you don't know what you're looking for, like the different anomalies, they're hard to pick up. Like hard. I've yet to like glass and find anything. So yeah, I'm a mega rookie when it comes to the shed hunting game.
Yeah, glassing is a huge key too. I mean, if you can pick up a handful of sheds through the glass, without having to hike your butt off, that gives you a head start. And usually, if you can glass up a shed, then it'll lead you to another one on your way to it. That's a big strategy for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, if you guys, again, we talked about is Chag Outdoors. Is that your website?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys want to learn more about shed hunting, head on over there. Hey, I want to talk to you about that mule deer that you had up at the show. Do you mind sharing the story about how that whole thing came about?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing, I did not. A lot of people, just because of my history, a lot of people think I've been following the buck, just because I usually have history with these deer in years past, where I'm like watching them 1 to 2 years, maybe even 6 years. And the cool thing about this buck was I had no history with him, and he was kind of a wild card that popped up 2 weeks before the hunting season in the scouting process. And yeah, so that was kind of the cool thing about this buck, is I was not expecting or anticipating to find him. I had a good buck found in the summer he was nice. He was probably close to 190 score wise if I was going to put a score on him. Had some trash, but I just did not like where he was at. There was a lot of guys that hunt that area. It's pretty popular. A couple really good hunters were actually going to be up there hunting him, so I just didn't want the competition. So I kept scouting, and then, like I said, around August 4th, I ended up turning this buck up in a whole new area. And so that was kind of cool. I wasn't expecting it, and dove all in on him. Went 2 weeks straight just watching him every day I could, and I typically could pick him up every day. Sometimes I would get a far, like 5 mile away look, and I could just tell it was him, but that was good enough. I could confirm he was there. And then other days I'd go and get a couple 100 yards away and bust out the scope and get some really good video of him.
That's cool, because I think for me, as I'm beginning like my journey through this process, I hear guys like you that like will find like one buck or something like that. That's what I'm going to go after. Like I'm going to chase him down and see what we can do to find him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still happy when I stumble across anything, let alone like having any type of like recall as to, yeah, that was, Steve, right? Like I want to go chase Steve down. So I think it's cool that you're able to do that. I mean, that's like a whole other level of skill, at least in my opinion. But this guy, you found him, and so did you were just watching him for 2 weeks, or were you kind of chasing after him for 2 weeks?
No, so when I start my scouting process, it's like mid-July usually, maybe the first end of the first week of July, July 7th. I have a spreadsheet of every basin, every trailhead that I want to hit, and I just start breaking each one down. So I'll go through, scout that one, take note of what I saw in there that day, what bucks it was. Like, oh, this one only had young bucks. This one had a buck that 2 years from now is going to be big, just so you could tell by his age and genetics. Or this one has a buck that is a hit list buck for this year. And I'll break them all down. And once I go through all of them, then I'll kind of assess the spreadsheet and then say, okay, I need to go back and focus on this one, and this one. And then kind of those last 2 to 3 weeks of the summer before the archery hunt, I'll start to kind of make a tighter spreadsheet and get 3 bucks picked out and go from there. So I'd gone through all of that, found him kind of on that tail end of the scouting process. And those 2 weeks were just leading up to the hunt. Opening day was, I think, August 17th or 19th this year. And so yeah, I was just scouting at that point, just trying to get good video of him while they're still in their summer patterns and kind of out in the open some more, and just get an idea of what I'm working with, if I'm seeing other hunters in the area, uh, getting an idea of where I'm going to camp, how I'm going to hunt him, and just kind of putting that game plan together. And so that way, when opening day comes, I'm ready to go.
What did you think when you saw him?
Oh man, so he was actually, I think he was the second buck that I saw, and that day. So I hiked up to my point, and I had my dog with me, and I just talked to him like he's a person, when I'm out there hiking around. So we're hiking, and we set up my tripod, and I see a buck with a big body coming out of the trees, walking across this hillside. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a big buck. Like he just looked mature, and I was really excited. So I put my scope on him, and it ended up being a little 3-point, like a very average 3-point. And so I was really disappointed. Like,
So something I would be thrilled with.
yeah, and he was a nice buck, but I thought I was about to put eyes on a giant.
Right.
He just had that look. Probably an old buck, but just didn't have the genetics. So I was kind of like, oh shoot, man, like I got my hopes up on that one. So then I look over to the left though, and about 200 yards away, I see another deer. And so I'm like, there's a deer. Pan the scope over, and this buck, he has his head down, and it was like as soon as the scope got steady, he picks it up and looks. He's not looking at me, but looks right my
Your
direction.
direction.
And I remember I was like, oh, that's like talking to my dog. I have an audio on one of my video clips. I'm like, oh, Tracker, that's a big buck. That's a big buck. Like, and I don't freak out really. So like, that's me getting excited, just kind of like that. So I was just like, oh, that's a big buck. I knew he had the frame, he had the mass, and he was still growing. Like their antler tips get kind of balled up in the summertime. And so I knew he was still going to put maybe 3 more inches on each time. So right off the bat, I knew he was a stud.
That's awesome. It's fun when you get out there and see something like in the wild. I've only had a couple instances where, something has come across. It was my very first like bull that I was chasing. Chasing. He stumbled into me. I was up there trying to find anything, but when I saw him, I'm like, there's no way this is going to be like my first bull. You got to be kidding me. But that's crazy. How, like, do you worry like they're going to disappear? Like when you see them, like how far do they, like when you're in your area, I mean, cause you start tracking them and watching them, like how far of a range do you think they go from the time that you saw him, 2 weeks before opening season or the opening day. And, like that's the one thing for me. Like I have no idea like how far. I'm still trying to figure this out. Like I'm green.
Well, yeah. So in the summer, that's kind of the beauty with it is come July, mid-July, usually they're back to their summer range, and their summer range can be pretty tight. I've seen, and usually the older the buck, I've found the tighter their little home pocket is. They'll return usually to the same basin every year, or ridge line or face, whatever it is that they're living on. And once they're there from July to October, they're not moving very much at all. So they might go nocturnal with hunting pressure, but they're not leaving that area. They might drop 1,000 feet in elevation to some thicker trees, but they're still in that area. So that's kind of the beauty with that early hunt is they're in that summer routine where they're like going out on an open face at night to feed. You could catch them in the morning, transitioning over to the trees, and then hopefully pattern that behavior and then hunt them based on that.
Yeah, that's way cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't too worried about him moving. I knew if there was hunting pressure, he definitely could move. So that's always a concern. And usually it's like a 2-week cycle. I've noticed with these big bucks, at least in the unit I'm hunting, that's all I can really speak for on that. But if they get bumped, say opening weekend, usually there's like one light bump they'll they'll put up with, but if they get spooked hard, they'll go into hiding for 1 to 2 weeks and usually disappear. And then I don't know, like sometimes I can relocate them and other times, I'll never figure it out and you just have to keep going to the same spot and wait for them to return.
See if something else shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll always come back, but it takes a couple weeks sometimes to show themselves.
Yeah. And how did you get this buck?
So yeah, so anyways, kind of had my pattern on him, had my camp set up, and opening day came. I'd seen him the day before, doing his usual thing. He liked, there was kind of a basin, and he'd either be on the back side or at on the other side, and then work up to these trees in bed. And he did that the day before the opener, so I had a good pattern. Opening day came, and we had some of the worst lightning and thunderstorms that I've ever seen before, and especially that I've ever been like immersed in.
I was out in that too. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, it
Like
was
legit.
terrible.
Like and we were up high, when that was coming in. We were chasing a bull, but that's the first time, like I could smell the lightning.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but
No,
yeah,
it's funny how small it makes you feel. Like in the grand scheme of things, you're like, wow, I'm helpless out here. If something comes down and strikes me, like I can't do anything about it. So yeah, it was pretty scary.
Did you have the wind too?
Yeah, it was windy as heck. So my camp was up on an open ridge, and it was pretty high elevation, and so I wasn't at my camp when this storm hit, and so I was just under a tree, kind of close to the deer. I was actually probably within 100 yards of the buck, just kind of set up, waiting, seeing if he would come feeding out. And so that storm hit, the wind came through, lightning was popping right by me, like within 50 feet, 50 yards, something like that. And so I dropped a bunch of elevation and sat out the day, soaking wet, drenched, and sat there all the way till dark. And the storm eventually passed right before dark, but didn't see the buck. So I was a little bit worried that my camp didn't make it through the storm. It was like I said, on a ridge line, and you mentioned the wind, very windy.
Yeah, and where I was at, we had like 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts.
Oh wow!
I mean, that was the first time. Well, okay, there's been 2 times I've been scared out in Mother Nature. One was when a storm hit up. We were out on the boat in Bear Lake, and then there was this. Like I was with my son. We were up there, and I'm like, this is how it ends for us, dude. I mean, it was just dumping rain. We were soaked. I mean, to the bone. Yeah, just like the flashes were so bright. I'm like,
you had rain gear or no?
He took my rain gear. I gave him my rain gear.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 25. He should have known better.
Yeah. Well, still got to be.
It was actually his bull we were chasing, so I gave that to him. I gave it to him, and I had some other warm clothes for a minute that worked. But yeah, he was. He's like, I'm like, I told you before we left. I'm like, grab your rain gear. He's like, it's in the truck, and I'm like, well, the truck's 2.5 miles away from us right now. But yeah, we kind of had the same thing. We just had to like hunker down in that storm, and I didn't even like. I'm like, do we stay underneath this tree? Because we were. Have you ever been up like in Bountiful area?
Oh yeah.
So they've got those. They cut that out. You probably know exactly where we were at. But anyway, they'd put these power lines in that in up there. So we're like in this thick. I mean, we were at that point when we first started heading back. We were probably 5 miles from the truck. But dude, that wind hit. It was. I mean, the wind was so hard. Like you had to like turn your back to it just so you could try and breathe. I mean, it was. And then the rain. The lightning, yeah, it was even with the rain gear, like with him taking my rain gear. I mean, I just had my jacket, but he was still soaked too. I mean, it was because the rain's coming this way and that way and that way, and it almost seems like it's coming up from the earth as well. Like you can't get anywhere. And then so we're in the trees and we're next to these power lines. I'm like, dude, we've got to get the hell out of here. I'm like, we can't like stay here. So we tried to work out over, but also it's like you're not supposed to like go out in the opening because especially with the gear that we had, I'm like, we're like a target out here for the lightning. I don't know. I just kept praying. I'm like, Lord, like spare us, please.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I probably prayed more in like there was one pop that went right across my face and it actually cinched some of the chin hair on my face. I could smell something burning and I thought it was a tree. So I'm looking around for a tree on fire and there's nothing. And I ran down, lost 1,000 feet in elevation and I could still smell it. And then it was when I started filming, I could see like some white on my chin. So I rubbed it off and it was just frizzed, but or cinched. But yeah, I prayed a couple times during that storm, and there's nothing you can do. Like you said, if you go under a big tree to try to stay dry, but then you're also like, well, is this going to be the next target because it's a big tree? Hmm. Yeah,
It's that, yeah, like I said, I mean, I I spent a lot of time outdoors doing different things, but that was like, I don't know, like just thinking about that, like it brings back like that sense of just like you said, like how small you are in the grand scheme of things.
right.
And it was unnerving. I don't get rattled very often. Like it takes a lot to rattle me. That rattled the snot out of me.
Oh yeah,
And I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, dude, I'm like, if my wife is going to kill me if anything happens to me or my son, but then I'm also in like the same breath thinking like, well, I'm already going to be dead. So like, there's not much you can do, but that, dude, that's crazy that it came across your face.
yeah.
And you're like, something's burning.
Yep. No, that's literally what happened. And I was bummed because I thought I was recording, but I guess so I thought I had it on camera, so that was going to be cool, but I guess I had stopped recording literally seconds before that happened. So that was kind of a bummer. That would have been pretty cool and I probably made a funny face with how scared I was.
Oh,
But yeah, I didn't quite capture that, but it was seconds after I turned my camera off, it popped and then I was gone. I didn't have my rain pants on. So I got soaked from the waist down. My top was dry, but arguably I'd rather have my pants be dry than my shirt, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I was soaked and lost all that elevation. And it was also, I want to say, it's a good reminder how cold it can get in the summertime up there. I was shivering, like cold to the bone up there, just without having, puffy pants or a puffy jacket, something to keep you a little bit more warm, just sitting up there wet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't feel like I was in danger, like I would get hypothermia. I'd just hike out if I had to. But say you're in the backcountry, even more deep, like 10 miles deep, that could get kind of scary if you get wet like that and temperatures drop. But anyways, yeah, I was nervous that my tent wasn't going to make it through the storm, so I actually ended up hiking out that night and just said I'm not going to hike up all this elevation to get to a camp that's not there and
It's
soaking wet.
destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually hiked out that night and pulled an all-nighter, threw my clothes in the dryer because it's like probably an hour of commute time plus a hour 45 hike each way. And then threw my clothes in the dryer and headed back up at like 2 a.m. to get back up there by daylight.
Jeez. Did your
But
camp make it?
it did make it. So shout out to Peaks Equipment. I don't know if you work with them or use their stuff, but it was sitting there like nothing happened when I got back up to it.
That's wild. Yeah, they've got great gear. I don't really have a whole bunch of camp stuff yet. I've just been going out with folks and using their stuff, but yeah, they've got great gear. I did just get me some sissy sticks, which will be nice. That's my start into the venture there with Peaks.
Cool. Yeah, those are a necessity too.
Yeah. Well, and I thought I was okay. That same storm that I was talking about. We had gone up this back slope that we were like, well, maybe there's something back there because we'd seen evidence of elk, but this wall that we were at, there was nothing there. And we're like, let's go up this back face. And then the storm hit. We actually it took us 3 hours we were in like scrub oak up to our shoulders. Like I'm stepping down into like deadfall that I can't even see as deadfall. I about broke my leg up there. Like it went through, pinched it. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing these pants over the ones I was wearing. They're like they're not even real, like they're the QU like switchback. So they're like super light.
Yeah.
And it like stained the shin where like it went down in. Like I can't get the stain out. So it's a reminder to me of like it was close. I mean, I hit it hard and when I went through, like I thought for sure I'd broken it. It hurt so stinking bad. But
Jeez.
anyway, we ended up getting up and getting out. But the second we got to the top of that ridge, I had finally got cell service. I called my wife and I'm like, hey, we're just so you know, like we're getting ready to head back. I'm like, we're going to drop you. Cause we had gotten to like the top of this peak to where I had cell service. I'm like, it's getting ugly up here and I can see a storm coming. And the second I hit like the winds just hit. Like it went from 0 to like 80 miles an hour. And then the rain hit and the lightning and the thunder. And yeah, man, but that's cool that your camp was there. So anyway, I apologize. Like I've gone down like a rabbit hole here on like my own story and I want to hear
No,
yours. So
no, that's cool to hear yours too. I mean, I've had actually at the expo, I had a couple people come by and tell me their version of the storm too. It was just kind of funny how everyone hunting northern Utah at the time kind of experienced that same day. Some people, they had one guy showed me his truck when he got back to it, and it was buried up to like the middle of his rim with just dirt that had been washed down through like, some of the drainages and whatnot. And he was kind of parked in one with his front end, and it was halfway buried from that much water coming through there and pushing rocks and debris. But so yeah, that was kind of cool to hear and share. Everyone shared that same moment, it seemed like.
it like you said, it's a good perspective on how small we are, and another reason to make sure that you take the proper time to prepare. Make sure you have the right equipment, whether it's like a tent, whether it's the rain gear, whether it's something else that's just going to be able to keep you warm. Um,
Another a big piece that I feel like a lot of people don't carry, maybe they do, but I didn't start carrying it until this year. Everywhere I go is a rain fly for your backpack. Um, that's a great piece just because I have camera gear. I've got maybe my puffy jacket at times in there that which you want to keep dry. Maybe a change of clothes, whatever it is, survival stuff. Anything you want dry, like if you have a rain fly over your backpack, that's going to help a ton. So I've been packing that. It weighs nothing. So even on a good day, you don't realize, or a nice, sunny day, you don't realize it's there, but at least it is there if shit hits the fan, for lack of better words.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
and that's the thing is it's like if you're not in Utah and you're out hunting, you haven't done it before, or you are from Utah, you know the old adage, like if you don't like the weather here in Utah, just give it 5 minutes.
mhm,
Because it can go from sunny to windy and stormy and in a hurry for sure.
yeah.
For sure. So you get back up to camp, it's still there. You
Yep.
pulled an all-nighter. At that point, did you decide like, hey, I'm going to go try and put a stock on this buck, or were
So
you going to call it for a little bit?
no, so I knew it was going to be a sunny day. At least the forecast showed that. So I knew it was going to be a great opportunity to catch some deer out and moving. Usually after storms, animals are eager to get a little bit of sun on them, dry off. And I figured everything was kind of displaced and like moved around because of the storm. A lot of those animals were dropping elevation just like I was, to get away from the lightning and get down into some thicker country, because some of those peaks up there, they don't have anything. Some of those deer just bed in the wide open sometimes under a rock in the summertime. So they were getting down into the thicker trees. So I knew it was going to be a good day. So I got to my glassing point, and within seconds, I mean, I didn't even have my optics up. I could see deer, and they were all kind of bunched up. There was he was off to the side a little bit, but there was quite a bit of deer, maybe 8 or 10 of them. And so threw the binos up, saw a couple does, saw a couple bucks that he hangs out with, and then panned over to the right a little bit and saw him standing right there. And I kind of had made some noise getting up to this glassing point, and they were on alert looking my way, but not spooked yet, like to where they're just blowing out. They're just kind of like trying to figure out what's going on, where that noise was coming from.
They're like, should we panic?
Right. And usually with big bucks, I've noticed that they're very slow and methodical. Like they want to sit and like think things out, because if they just start running, usually on public land, OTC hunts, there's so many other hunters that if they run, they're just going to run into another hunter. So I think these deer have learned to survive by just kind of like being slow, methodical, thinking things through, let the other deer like go crazy or scurry or go first and then they make their move. So I could see the other deer kind of started doing that. They started scurrying away and just like going up towards their bedding zone. And he looked at them and didn't follow them, and started to push a 2-point up towards this other direction where there was an avalanche chute, where like snow and winter runoff over the years has etched out this real rocky, like big ravine. And so I saw him pushing that 2-point towards this ravine away from the other group of deer. And hindsight, it ends up being the reason he dies, but he was just being smart. He's like, I don't want to do what the other deer are doing. And so I knew I had to act quick, judging by his body language. He was going to hide in that ravine for a minute, and that's where he would bed sometimes too. So I was like, all right, I got to pick a spot, cut him off, but I can't get above him because I need to keep that wind in my face. And in the mornings, those thermals are going downhill. So I knew I had to time it to where I have the wind in my face, but I also kind of meet him at the same time, like almost make a triangle shape, if you will, starting from the bases. And so I took off, grabbed my bow, left my pack and my optics, everything, just had my bino and my harness, and took off. And within probably 20 minutes of kind of running and sneaking at the same time, I got to that avalanche chute. And that is where I then saw the 2-pointer that he had pushed kind of bebopping and working his way up this chute. I didn't see the big buck, but I knew he was close once I saw that 2-pointer. And then go ahead.
No, I just said that's like it's fun to hear. Like okay, like I made the right angle. I'm in the right place. Like I'm making the right play.
Right. Yeah. And usually it doesn't work out that way, but that's why that's why we love bow hunting. Like this one time it worked, but the other 55 times I've tried that same thing, it doesn't work. But this time it worked. I still had the wind right. I didn't have a visual of the big buck, but I knew the little one was right there. So I stopped and I was within bow range too. So I stopped, set my tripod up, which has my camera on it, my Sony with the lens, and was just kind of sitting there being observant. And I look up, and a little bit to the left of the 2-point, I see antler tips coming out of this chute, and it's the big buck. So I hurried and crouched down, and he's actually just feeding. So he must have, written off the noise and felt like because he went into that chute and gained some elevation, he was away from whatever danger there was. And
little did he know there was a martin sneaking up on him.
Right. So he's feeding, and I kind of have to readjust a little bit. And as I'm readjusting, he hears that little sound and just picks his head up and looks right down my way. And fortunately, I kind of was watching him as I was setting up, so I had my eye on him. And as soon as I saw his head coming up, I just dropped to my knees. And my camera's way up here, but I'm down on the ground. And he's just looking straight down right at me, kind of like how they look out of the corner of their eye,
Yeah.
right towards me, head kind of tilted. I wish I could have captured that on video, but it was too risky to be like playing with the camera. And it was just so cool. He's looking right at me. You could tell he's thinking, and just kind of like puts his head down, and then he does the little juke where he like puts his head down and right away whips it right back up and looks to see if anything moved in that little amount of
See
time.
if he caught you slipping.
Yep. And so fortunately, I wasn't slipping. I was still just sitting there. And then after about 15 seconds of that, he kind of like twitches his tail, starts chewing a little bit, and puts his head down. So I knew body language wise, that means he's relaxing. He's like, all right, we're good. So bump the camera over, get it on record. And the tough part is I was shooting uphill pretty steep, and it was tall grass. So I'm on my knees. Camera has a better angle than me. So if you guys watch the video, it looks like I have a straight shot at him, but that's because my camera is way up high and I'm kind of shooting through the grass, but he's about 45 yards away. I can kind of tell where I need to hold, but it's really tough. I'm shooting right through some grass, and anchor, relax, shoot, and I hear it hit him. But then he kind of takes 2 or 3 hard bounds and goes out of the camera frame, but he's really only like 15 yards from where I first hit him. And I could see it was a little bit far, a little bit back and low from being, a double lung shot. And so, but he's hit hard, and he's just like standing there looking back at me with a big old hole in him. I'm shooting a 2-inch expandable, so it leaves quite the mark. And he's standing there, so I hurry and just anchor, put another arrow in, and shoot him. And my follow-up shot connects, and he runs a little bit, stops, and then he starts rolling down the hill. And that was it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it worked out perfectly on the video, and when I tell the story, it sounds like it was easy, but it's just funny. That's how bow hunting is. It's so hard and impossible until the one time it comes together.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that was dumb. Like that just happened.
Well, I mean, look, you say, as you tell the story, you make it sound easy. I mean, I don't think anything about that sounds easy. I mean, you talk about, starting July 7th last year, you were out starting, to like search, stalk, like put yourself in position. So there was a lot of effort, and then you whittled it down from there to, okay, here's the 3 I want to go after. And then, obviously narrow it down to there. So it's the old adage, the harder I work, the luckier I get. You've done a lot to put yourself in a position to be able to do that. And one of the things that I've discovered since I started this podcast back in October is I haven't worked very hard. I thought I worked hard. I haven't worked very hard to go out and get the job done. So, yeah, I'm personally excited, like hearing like the details of what you've done. Like I have ADHD, and like my full-time gig, I work in sales at iHeartMedia. So, and as a sales guy, like you're always looking for shortcuts, right? And in hunting, like you don't get shortcuts. You might get lucky every now and again, but like I said, I started hunting 4 years ago, and I've yet to let an arrow fly at an animal. I had one opportunity. I didn't have a clean shot on vitals, and I just said, I don't want to do that. So, but it was like the first time I'd gone out, and dude, it just like hooked me. Like, just like, I have to do this for the rest of my life. And I'm old. Like I'm an older guy getting into this. I mean, I'm 45 now, and you got young guys like you. I'm glad that my son's doing it now. Like we grew up playing, like I coached baseball. He played baseball, and we spent a lot of time together, and just something fun for us to get out and do. Like you do a lot of solo stuff, but it's great. I think it's great to get out with friends, and especially with family. You just get out there and do it. But yeah, that's the one thing that he and I've talked about. It's like we'd go out and scout a little bit, try and spend some time out there. But then you got guys like you that make it look easy. I mean, I having done it myself, like I don't think anything you guys do looks easy. It looks fun. You guys are well executed. You're dialed into what you're doing. And I don't know. I don't know how, like, it's hard enough for me to get on the animals and be able to get in a position to draw back, let alone like, hold on a second, before I take this buck, let me make sure I got the camera set up.
Yeah, I always joke and say the camera's never helps you. It only hurts you to have it rolling, you know what I mean? And I've definitely blown a few stocks, just whether it's I get the camera on them, but then they move by the time I try to range them and draw. And if I just had to range and draw, I could have made a easy shot. So like yeah, it hurts, but I mean, I guess that's the trade-off when you're kind of doing it for a living, like that's the job. So don't
Yeah.
complain about it. But
Well, and you get to capture that. Like you're able to capture like that memory. I mean, I think it's great to be able to go back and tell the story. Like, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that here. And we'll make sure for anybody that's listened to this, like in the show notes, we'll put a link to Martin's Instagram account. We'll get the link to the video as well, so you can go watch that. Um, but it is fun to kind of sit back and recap, and then for the people that are able to go back and like relive it.
yeah,
Like you go back and like see the little details. And as you get further away from the different hunts that you do, like you may forget little bits and pieces so when you're able to go back and watch, reflect, you're able to pull back. Oh, I remember this. And,
exactly.
like we talked about, like with the storms and that, like it's
Yep.
an fun experience, man.
No, absolutely. And yeah, like going back to like you're saying your journey and not having success. Well, as soon as I killed that buck, like you're feeling like a rock star. A couple days into the hunt, you're like, oh, heck yeah, roll into the next hunt. Well, I went on two more hunts after that that lasted from the beginning of September all the way till December. And then I didn't punch a tag, hunted every day. I maybe took 6, 7 days off in that whole time. Didn't tag out on. I had another deer tag and another elk tag, and didn't draw my bow back once for the elk hunt. And I did draw my bow back on the other deer hunt, and missed a shot on two shots on a buck. And so it just humbles you up real quick, and that's what I love about it. It's like you start at square one every hunt. Doesn't matter what you had, what success you had in the years past or the hunt prior. You start at square one at the beginning of every hunt. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but usually over time things start to snowball. You can, like with shed hunting, you gain more info. Scouting, you gain more info. Hunting experience, you gain more info. And down the road things can just kind of start to pile up, and I think you'll start to see more success.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things for me that has been kind of cool to experience, is just having these conversations and like hearing your story, right? Like I'm able to pull a little bit of that, and I go back to some of the other experiences that I had hunting, and you start to kind of piece things together, right? I should do this different. I could do this different, or I did this right. I need to do more of that. And I just think it makes for just an overall like fun learning atmosphere. But there's nothing that you can, there's no amount of YouTube videos that you can watch that are going to prepare you by just being out there on the mountain, chasing down an animal, learning how to glass. Like that's the one thing, like I'm learning how to glass. I'm learning how to like quadrant, right? Like kind of quadrant out. Like okay, I'm going to go back and forth, and then I'll move on. And yeah, I don't know. It's fun, and I'm grateful that I get to do it. I'm grateful that I started a little bit later. It makes it fun to be, a guy in his mid 40s out there trying to figure out something new, and looking forward to taking, like I said, my son comes out. He's got some friends that didn't grow up hunting. They've always wanted to, so we take them out. I'm, confident every time I take him out. I'm like, oh, I'm bringing these guys to help pack some meat out for us.
There you go.
But anyway, it hasn't happened. But this is going to be the year, Martin.
I think it will. Yeah.
I feel we're getting something down. So we're going to go do a black bear hunt, I think, up in Idaho in June, which will be kind of fun. And
I've heard those are a riot. I mean, I've been on a couple. I filmed one, and I did have a tag a couple years ago. And yeah, it's fun. Good time of year. You're glassing, so you're working on your glassing skills that you could take into big game on with antlered animals and whatnot. So, and then yeah, it's kind of something to do in the downtime of the year, and fill that void.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
that'll be a fun hunt for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. It's
With
fun.
you said you have ADD, or that's probably hard to glass. Then it's definitely been a learning curve for you.
That, yeah, and just like once what I found is like I've gotten into position like I said, we found some wallows. We get down there, and after like 20 minutes, I'm like, should we go look for something?
Yo,
And it's like everyone's telling me like, dude, like you got to just like now for with my ADD, like like glassing is actually not bad because like I'm doing something right. Like I go
hmm
through, break down the quadrants. It's the thing that I have struggled with is just the like sit and put
oh yeah,
because we I, that's what I said. Putting the pieces together. I know of a guy that's taken two bulls in the exact same area that my son and I had gone, but it's probably me just going like, well, let's go look over here, let's go look over there. Just you need to sit down, don't make a lot of noise, like let them come to you. Like there's this nice wallow for them to come to, but
no, you can only go through your phone and delete pictures and video that you don't need and clear your storage space so many times, and then you're like looking around. Everyone's attention span is 3 seconds nowadays because of Instagram. So
yeah.
yeah, sitting is tough for me too. Usually I'll do a few sits, but personally, I've never had great success like sitting on a wallow, and maybe I just haven't found the right one yet. But I really like to do a lot of glassing, locate, and then stalk in. That's just my style.
Well, what I've discovered, the area that we've been going, I need to just sit put up there.
Yeah,
Um, and there's another area that I can go that you can that's a better spotting area that I didn't know about, but you're figuring things out. Like you figure it out. That's the thing. You just have to get out there.
right,
But yeah, there's some good little bulls up the area that we've been going. It's a nice little weekend hunt. It's not too far from home, so it makes the wife happy that you're not gone for a week.
right.
And then my boy who's doing this with me, he's a newlywed. He just got married last year, so they like to have you know, I told him, I'm like, you need to set expectations now, like you're going to be gone hunting for a while.
Oh yeah, yep. For me, that's the big thing. Like, if I am talking to a girl, dating a girl, they need to know this is my job. I'm gone a lot, and there's really no exception. Like, I hunt, dang near every day sometimes, and so if I had, I'd probably scale some of it back. But yeah, I'm not bending much on that. That's a kind of a non-negotiable, but it's going to save you problems and down the road if you kind of set that expectation right off the bat.
Yeah, versus a guy like me who's mid 40s and has never we haven't spent very many nights away from my wife. And she's like, "Wait, you're going to be gone how long?"
Yeah,
You're going where? But
yep.
and then the other thing too is like she does not want me to go by myself. And so like I'm debating like this year, do I just tell her I'm going with people so that I can get out and
Yeah.
go?
If you
But
got one of those little Garmins, those
in reach,
yeah, those are handy to at least stay in contact.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
so,
whatever.
how old did you say your boy is?
He's 25.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm 29, so probably just out of his age range, but I played baseball growing up too. I was
Where'd you play?
at Cottonwood High School.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, Cottonwood
So
always had a great baseball program.
yeah, so I probably would have just missed playing with him then if he was, or against him if he was 4 years younger.
Yeah, he went to Viewmont. Um, played a little bit of everything. He was like first team, like utility player. Like he was all over the place. He's got a nasty knuckleball.
Hmm,
And it's fun when he would throw that knuckleball. You'd see him smile, and like the other team would be like, "Here comes the knuckleball,"
that's
and
funny.
he threw strike, and they couldn't hit it. Like it's coming, but yeah, Baseball is a ton of fun. Cottonwood, you guys have had like a tough baseball program for a long time.
Yeah, they had a really good winning streak. I think they took state a few times. The class before me, we were always in the running, but never won state. And then I think after I graduated, I think they won state one or two more times. But yeah, they've had a good program. That's why I went there. I actually grew up in West Valley and was supposed to go to Hunter High School,
Okay.
but they didn't take their baseball serious there. Like you got the football team playing on the baseball field for practice, and
Viewmont does the same thing. It pisses
yeah,
me off. Like,
yeah, I'm
like
like,
you go out there and try and like run practice, and you got guys rolling their ankles from the divots in the freaking outfield.
yeah. So I was all about baseball growing up, so I wasn't gonna go there and treat it like I didn't care. So Cottonwood, they have that nice indoor facility, so we could practice all year long inside, and then we got a practice field plus a baseball field to play on, and so yeah, that's why I commute every day to go up there. But
What position did you
man,
play?
I was usually short or second, just depending
Middle
on
infield.
the
Yeah.
yeah, middle infield, just depending on the game. We had a couple good middle infielders, so we'd kind of alternate back and forth. But
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's Jackson played. He was middle infielder. He played his senior year, I think, every position except for right field and catcher. I mean, and that's hard. I mean, you have to be a good ball player to be able to play all those different positions. I mean, really, when you get to high school, like you've got one or two positions that they've got you playing. I mean, even I did the same thing when I was coaching the comp teams. It's like kids had like their core positions. We'd rotate the pitchers, and depending on who was pitching, then someone else would have to go. The game, you go
yeah,
fill that spot. But yeah, play middle infield at Cottonwood. You had to be pretty darn good.
yeah, I was decent, man. Like I just like hunting now. I ate, slept, and dreamt, the sport. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I did go to college and played, but that's about where I all of a sudden just fell out of love with the game, and wasn't like I couldn't compete or anything. It was maybe the dynamic and just not a good fit for me, but mentally I just started to clock out, and hunting like was all I wanted to do. And so that's when I came home and just started really diving into the hunting side of things, I'd say. But yeah, it was life for gosh, my whole childhood all the way up till I was 19.
Yeah. Jackson was the same way. He could have gone and played, but just kind of gotten burnt out. Like
That's one
we,
thing. If I have a kid or a son that wants to play baseball growing up, I'm not gonna have him dive in, just be a one sport player and do it 365 days out of the year. I think, that's great. And some guys can pull it off, but I do think that's what led to my burnout, at arguably like the time when I should have been diving into it the most, right before, right when you're in college, trying to make it to maybe a pro team of some
yeah,
sort. That's when I burnt out, when I should have been, my love should have been increasing for the sport.
yeah.
And I mean, it's great to gives you something to do, but yeah, if you can play basketball or football and baseball, and kind of do everything and have it
Maybe go out and hunt a little bit too.
hunt a little bit in the fall, yeah, that was one thing for me. They wanted us playing fall ball and doing the fall leagues, and I'm like, I want to go hunting right now, and so it can be a lot if you dive in that much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I mean. My boy, when he was 10, he knew he wanted to start hunting. He's like, Dad, like, let's go down to Wild Arrow, because we're in Davis County. He's like, let's run down to Wild Arrow. I want to go look at bows. So we'd go look, and I didn't grow up with it. Like I didn't have it. And anyway, he's like, I want a bow. I'm like, I'm not buying you a bow. I'm like, when are you gonna go do it? Because we would do Rocky Mountain baseball. We'd do Utah Select League. I mean, we were having, dude, we would have sometimes like 5-6 games a week. And looking back on it, it's fun because the comp team that we took, they were all kids that were going to go to school together. Like we didn't have like a traveling team where we pulled kids from everywhere. We're like, hey, we want to go be able to let them compete. And Viewmont should have won the state championship. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say what I'm really thinking. But anyway, we had that team teed up. There's a ton of kids that went on and played college baseball, great athletes. My boy had a ton of fun. But yeah, he was always like, let's go do it. And then finally, he got out of high school, went and got a job. He was doing some roofing and making some good money. He started running his own crew. He's a go-getter. Like, he's a talented kid, and he's got a lot of drive. And so he went down and bought his own bow, and he's like, let's go hunt. And I'm like, hey, we'll go hunt together if we'll put in, and if we draw the same unit, we'll go,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go. And I'm thinking, like, I'm off the hook, right? We drew the same unit. I'm like, crap. So
The
then I go
rest is
down and talk,
history.
I go down and talk to Jeremiah. Well, and I did, and I started shooting, and I really enjoy, and I'm actually, like, I've gotten to be a really good shot. Like, I've got some range on me, and I don't know if it's just dumb luck or what, but I've been shooting for 4 years, and I tell people like, well, what's the farthest shot you would take? And I'm like, 100 yards. They're like, seriously? And I'm like, I'm pretty accurate. Like, I'm tall, I've got like a long draw. So like that higher range is kind of where I start to settle in. It's that 40 and under yard shot where my grouping's like big, but you put me like around 60, 80 yards, and I start having like a nice tight grouping of arrows. And anyway, I don't know that I'd actually do it, but in my mind, I'm like 100 yards, I'd smoke something.
See, I'm like 20 to 30 yards, please, because after that, who knows what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, no, I practice a lot. But I think it is interesting, and there's probably some science to it, but I feel like newer people, like like if you got into it like you did at 40, I feel like you don't have the bad habits. I grew up shooting a bow. Like, I started with a recurve in my teens, so kind of different than a compound, but I think I got my first compound at 18. And I was just kind of self-taught. My dad didn't have a compound, so it was just watch Cam Haynes shoot on YouTube, and you kind of learn from that. And I developed some bad habits, and so I've had to work through those bad habits I developed at such a young age. Whereas maybe as an adult or something, you can kind of, I don't know, you're more fresh with it, and you just started out probably with a lot cleaner shot and more read up and versed in archery than I did. I just picked up a bow and started shooting.
Yeah,
And
like I said, I went down to Wild Arrow, and Cody Namor. I don't know if you know him down there.
oh yeah, yeah, he's a stud.
He's like, no, Ryan, don't do that. No, Ryan, no, do this. Move your arm here. And I'm like, oh, this is what I sounded like as a coach. I'm like, why do you not understand what I just told you?
You
But those guys are masters at what they do down there, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I just didn't have a lot of bad habits.
yeah,
I'm fairly athletic, and it's fun. And then I would just go out and do the reps. Just
yeah,
like you said, like nobody really had to unteach me anything. I just started, like, I would go down there, and those guys would coach me up, and I would go home and write down my notes, like, do this. And I find myself slipping every now and again, but yeah, it's fun. Like, we go up to the cabin, and we'll go sit the target out at 115 yards, and I'll just drop dimes on it. And like, my nieces and nephews they think it's like the coolest thing in the world. They're like, are you like Robin Hood? And I'm like, I wish. I
no,
wish.
that's impressive if you're accurate out to that distance for sure.
Well, I mean, it's a big target, but I am hitting where I want to hit. And I think sometimes too, it's just like you said, like, I just probably just didn't develop like a whole bunch of bad habits that make it tougher to shoot accurate. Like, I
Right.
keep hearing about like target panic, and then I'm getting panicked about getting target panic. Because I don't even think about it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of just go out there. I just know I let my pin float around. And when it gets about to where I think I want to hit it, I just let it rip.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't even want to say the word target panic because they're scared of it. I'm not that way, but I can acknowledge that I have a form of target panic, and mine that I always resort to is wanting to be able to. I shoot a single pin, but it happens with any pin, but wanting
That's what I
to
shoot.
wanting to have be able to see the pin and what I want to hit at the same time. So instead of covering what I want to hit with my pin, I want to kind of see it and my pin at the same time. So I'm always floating at around 6 o'clock, just a couple inches under what I want to hit. And then you have to kind of like try to time it, and then shoot, or you rush and kind of just like jerk up just a little bit. And you can get away with hitting the target and hitting your spot a lot doing it that way, but it's a recipe for like it's going to catch up to you one day and
Yeah.
you're going to screw up. So I'm pretty good at controlling it and working through it, but if I do something, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and right now for me, I'm shooting a target that is stationary,
Yeah.
so we'll see what happens once you got something that's moving, and then they duck or they jump or whatever. It's I know that there's a lot more that goes into it, and like I said, like I try not to let it float. Like I'll let it float, and then when I get it tight, then I try and like lock in on it.
Hmm.
And anyway, I say it's worked so far, but again, I'm hitting a target it's a big old block just sitting out there.
And what's funny, you say that some guys can hit foam all day, no problem, but then you throw an animal in front of them and they lose their mind. I'm the opposite. I really don't think when it comes down to shooting the animal. So like on a target, I'll get in my head all day, but on an animal, I've never pulled back and been shaky or not been able to execute a shot. Like I've missed before, but I felt like they were still good shots,
Yeah.
just missed. But yeah, I tend to focus up a little bit better when the time comes on an animal.
Well, so that one, I've drawn back one time on that bull when we were elk hunting,
Hmm.
and everyone's like, "Was your heart going 100 miles an hour?" And for whatever reason, like I was just like calm. Like I see him, I'm watching him. He was like 3 yards from stepping out into an opening, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like I'm gonna get a shot on vitals. And it's like I draw back. I'm like nice and calm. I've got it placed right to where it would be, and then I felt this breeze hit the back of my neck. I was busted. He stopped, turned, and he was like, "Later, dude. I'm out."
Yep. You can fool their eyes, you can fool their ears, but you'll never fool their nose. That's for
Yeah.
sure. They
But,
trust that's what keeps them alive.
but I was calm. Like my heart wasn't pounding, and everyone's. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know any better. But I
For
feel I feel pretty like relaxed out there. I mean, but I've taken so many shots with it to me that I'm just like I guess it's like another, and I mentioned this with somebody else in another podcast recently, but it's like For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner. It's like Clear the
hmm.
Mechanism, right? Like when he says that, just like everything goes silent. That's how I feel when I'm shooting a bow. Like, and it helps me in like all other aspects of my life. I just feel like when I go out and take some time and shoot my bow, like all the other noise just disappears. It's just like me, the bow, the arrow, and the target. And it's just relaxing to me. And so maybe that's why I carried over. We'll see what happens when I actually get ready to, pull the trigger and let that thing fly. But for now, I guess ignorance is bliss, Martin.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. I think for me, I now that we're kind of talking about it, I feel like my reason for being calm in the moment is I honestly don't want I wish you could hunt and not have to like kill the animal, if that makes sense. Like I'm not like freaking blood hungry. Like I don't like just shooting stuff to shoot it. Like when I killed my buck, I honestly in my head was kind of sad for the next 2 weeks because that moment of going up and watching him was gone. Like I can't do that anymore. I love just watching the dang thing walk around and feed and stuff. And so when I'm in that moment, I'm not just so eager to shoot the thing. Like obviously that's the goal. It's part of getting meat. It's part of the journey of being a hunter, right? But and so I'm going to do it, but I don't get so wound up in getting that shot off, and maybe that's why for me I'm like just kind of enjoying the moment and calm and collected,
Yeah.
for me. that just when I self-reflect, and yeah, like with you, what you said, practicing and making it be just second nature and automatic for you, that probably goes a long ways too, just to realize, hey, I'm in control of this situation, and
Yeah. You've
nothing's
prepared
gonna
for it.
happen. Yep, nothing's gonna happen until I pull the bow back and I release the arrow, and so like you just kind of calm down and settle in.
Yeah. Well,
But it's that anticipation of the shot and oh, I got to get it done. Oh, this is it. I better make it count. That's when things start to go haywire.
see, when I get nervous is when I start loading the truck up. That's when I start getting like anxious. I'm like, let's just get up there. Let's get on the mountain. Let's go find this thing. But then once like I'm driving, we get up there. I don't know. It's so relaxing to me. I mean,
Yeah,
like you like beat the living snot out of yourself on the mountain, but there is something too that's just it's you're able to like reconnect with nature and
absolutely.
all that fun stuff. Anyway, hey Martin, as we wrap up here, is there anything that for folks that are new to hunting, like any tips that you think that would be beneficial that they could apply to make them a better hunter and make it more enjoyable?
Yeah. For me, what I always come back to is fall in love with the journey, the wildlife, not the end goal of a kill, because especially if you're an archery hunter, success is usually 10% on an archery tag. 10, maybe if you draw a coveted tag, it's bumps up to 30%, 40, but most of these general OTC hunts we can get our hands on are 10% success. So you're not going to kill something most of the time. So get that out of your head, fall in love with the journey, learning, observing, and just get out there as often as you can. Summertime, scout; fall, hunt; wintertime, watch them on the winter range; springtime, shed hunt. Put boots on the ground, and whenever you have time to get out there, go out and do it, see what you can pick up. And I think that'll make you the most versed and well educated on the animals in the area, and lead to success down the road.
Martin, I appreciate those words, man. I think that's great advice. Okay, guys, on Instagram, it's Martin_Chag, chagoutdoors.com. And yeah, make sure if you're having a hard time finding it for whatever reason, just go check the show notes. We'll have the links and everything in there. Appreciate the time, Martin.
Thank you so much. It was fun talking.
Appreciate it. Stay safe. God bless. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hunt Stealth Podcast. Hey, I have a favor to ask. If you would and you enjoy this podcast, head on over to wherever you consume it and leave us a review. It's going to help us get this pumped out to more people that might be interested in hearing podcasts like this.